Well, hey there, everybody. It's Mrs. Acero here with another First Chapter Friday. I'm really happy to bring this novel to you today. It is a novel of a serious nature, of a tragic nature, but also of a hopeful nature. It is historical fiction. It takes place in the Dust Bowl back in the days of the Great Depression. And it is also a novel written in verse, which means instead of chapters, it's written in a series of poems. And I'm so happy to introduce you to Out of the Dust by Karen Hesse. Let's take a listen to what it's about before we begin. A terrible accident has transformed Billie Jo's life, scarring her inside and out. Her mother is gone, her father can't talk about it, and the one thing that might make her feel better, playing the piano, is impossible with her wounded hands. To make matters worse, dust storms are devastating the family farm and all the farms nearby. While others flee from the Dust Bowl, Billie Jo is left to find peace in the bleak landscape of Oklahoma and in the surprising landscape of her own heart. Before we start, I wanted to mention two things. First of all, if you didn't get to download your First Chapter Friday freebie, there is a link to it in the description of the video, and I hope you'll check that out. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I began reading this book to my students the year of the lockdown of COVID, and we found a lot of similarities and we found a lot of hope in the situation. So it starts in the year of 1920, which is the year the main character, the protagonist, Billie Jo, is born. And then it jumps 14 years to 1934 during the Great Depression because she is 14 when the actual story takes place. So it's a novel written in verse. And if you take a look, you'll see how I have a lot of notes in here. You'll see that they're very short pages and they're written in a series of poems, and novels in verse usually kind of have a nice fast pace and rhythmic tone to them. So let's take a listen, beginning August 1920. As summer wheat came ripe, so did I. Born at home on the kitchen floor, Ma crouched, barefoot, bare-bottomed, over the swept boards, because that's where Daddy said it'd be best. I came too fast for the doctor, bawling as soon as Daddy wiped his hand around inside my mouth. To hear Ma tell it, I hollered myself red the day I was born. Red's the color I've stayed ever since. You might want to think about the symbolism of the color red there. Daddy named me Billie Jo. He wanted a boy. Instead, he got a long-legged girl with a wide mouth and cheekbones like bicycle handles. He got a red-headed, freckle-faced, narrow-hipped girl with a fondness for apples and a hunger for playing fierce piano. From the earliest I can remember, I've been restless in this little panhandle shack we call home. The panhandle refers to the state of Oklahoma. It actually looks like there's a panhandle on it, and that section was very much affected by the dust storms. Always getting in Ma's way with my pointy elbows, my fidgety legs. By the summer I turned 9, Daddy had given up about having a boy. He tried making me do. I look just like him. I can handle myself most everywhere he puts me, even on the tractor, though I don't like that much. Ma tried having other babies. It never seemed to go right, except with me. But this morning, Ma let on as how she's expecting again. Other than the 3 of us, there's not much family to speak of. Daddy, the only boy Kelby left, Kelby is their last name, since Grandpa died from a cancer that ate up most of his skin, and Aunt Ellis, almost 14 years older than Daddy, and living in Lubbock, a ways south of here, and a whole world apart, to hear Daddy tell it. And Ma, with only great Uncle Floyd, old as ancient Indian bones and mean as a rattler, rotting away in that room down in Dallas. I'll be nearly 14, just like Aunt Ellis was when Daddy was born, by the time this baby comes. Wonder if Daddy will get his boy this time. Now, I know this is first chapter Friday, but like I said, this is written in verse and they're very quick. The chapters are actually poems, so I'm going to read a bunch of them to you. Just wanted to make sure that as you're listening, that you're listening for different poetic devices. The story is filled with them, with things like alliteration and similes, a little onomatopoeia thrown in there. So keep a listen for that, okay? Rabbit battles. Mr. Noble and Mr. Romney have a bet going as to who can kill the most rabbits. It all started at the rabbit drive last Monday over to Sturgis, when Mr. Noble got himself worked up about the damage done to his crop by jacks. Mr. Romney swore he'd had more rabbit trouble than anyone in Cimarron County. They pledged revenge on the rabbit population, wagering who could kill more. They ought to just shut up, betting on how many rabbits they can kill. Honestly, grown men clubbing bunnies to death makes me sick to my stomach. I know rabbits eat what they shouldn't, especially this time of year when they could hop halfway to Liberal and still not find food. But Miss Freeland says if we keep plowing under the stuff they ought to be eating, what are they supposed to do? Mr. Noble and Mr. Romney came home from Sturgis Monday with 20 rabbits apiece, a tie. It should have stopped there, but Mr. Romney wasn't satisfied. He said Noble cheated. He brought in rabbits somebody else killed, and so the contest goes on. Those men, they used to be friends. Now they can't be civil with each other. They scowl as they pass on the street. I'm scowling too. But scowling won't bring the rabbits back. They're all skinned and cooked and eaten by now. At least they didn't end up in Romney and Noble's cook pots. They went to families that needed the meat. The next poem is called Losing Livy. Livy Killian moved away. I didn't want her to go. We'd been friends since first grade. The farewell party was Thursday night at the Old Rock Schoolhouse. Livy had something to tease each of us about, like Ray sleeping through reading class and Hillary, who on her speed writing test put an even ton of children instead of an even 10. Livy said goodbye to each of us separately. She gave me a picture she'd made of me sitting in front of a piano, wearing a new straw hat, an apple halfway to my mouth. I handed Livy the memory book we'd all filled with our different slants. I couldn't get the muscles in my throat relaxed enough to tell her how much I'd miss her. Livy helped clean up her own party, wiping spilled lemonade, gathering sandwich crust, sweeping cookie crumbs from the floor while the rest of us went home to study for semester reviews. Now Livy's gone west, out of the dust, on her way to California, where the wind takes a rest sometimes. And I'm wondering what kind of friend I am, wanting my feet on that road to another place instead of Livy's. Me and Mad Dog. Arlie Wanderdale, who teaches music once a week at our school, though Ma says he's no teacher at all, just a local song plugger. Arlie Wanderdale asked if I'd like to play piano solo at the Palace Theater on Wednesday night. I grinned. pleased to be asked, and said, "That'd be all right." I didn't know if Ma would let me. She's an old mule on the subject of my schooling. She says, "You stay home on weeknights, Billie Jo," and mostly that's what I do. But Arlie Wanderdale said the management asked me to bring them talent, Billie Jo, and I thought of you. Even before Mad Dog Craddock, I wondered. You and Mad Dog, Arlie Wanderdale said. Darn that blue-eyed boy with his fine face and smooth voice twice as good as a plowboy has any right to be. I suspected Mad Dog had come first to Arlie Wanderdale's mind, but I didn't get too riled, not so riled I couldn't say yes. Permission to play. Sometimes when Ma is busy in the kitchen, or scrubbing, or doing wash, I can ask her something in such a way I annoy her just enough to get an answer, but not so much I get a no. That's a way I found of gaining what I want, by catching Ma off guard, especially when I'm after permission to play piano. Right out asking her is no good. She always gets testy about me playing, even though she's the one who truly taught me. Anyway, this time I caught her in the slow stirring of biscuits, her mind on other things. Maybe the baby growing inside her, I don't know. But anyhow, she was distracted enough. I was determined enough. This time I got just what I wanted. Permission to play the palace. This next one is called On Stage. I'm just going to point out again, when you're reading a novel in verse, one of the reasons it goes quickly is the way the wording is designed. On stage, when I point my fingers at the key, the music springs straight out of me, right hand playing notes sharp as tongues, telling stories while the smooth, buttery rhythms back me up on the left. Folks sway in the palace aisles, grinning and stomping and out of breath. And the rest, eyes shining, fingers snapping, feet tapping. It's the best I've ever felt. Playing hot piano, sizzling with Mad Dog, swinging with the Black Mesa Boys, on my own, crazy. The Black Mesa Boys were an actual group, so that's an allusion to something that's really true. On my own, crazy, pestering the keys, that is heaven. How supremely heaven playing piano can be. Birthday for FDR. I played so well on Wednesday night, Arlie put his arm across my shoulder and asked me to come and perform at the president's birthday ball. Ma can't say no to this one. It's for President Roosevelt. Not that Mr. Roosevelt will actually be there, but the money collected at the ball, along with balls all over the country, will go. In the president's name, to the Warm Springs Foundation, where Mr. Roosevelt stayed once when he was sick. Someday, I plan to play for President Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself. Maybe I'll go all the way to the White House in Washington, D.C. In the meantime, it's pretty nice Arlie asking me to play twice for Joyce City. Not too much to ask. We haven't had a good crop in 3 years, not since the bounty of 31, when we were all whittled down to the bone these days. Even Ma with her round new belly, but still, when the committee came asking, Ma donated 3 jars of applesauce and some cured pork, and a feed sack nightie she'd sewn for the coming baby. Mr. Hardley's money handling. It was Daddy's birthday, and Ma decided to bake him a cake. There wasn't money enough for anything like a real present. Ma sent me to fetch the extras with the 50 cents she'd been hiding away. Don't go to Joy City, Billy, she said. You can get what we need down Hardley's store. I slipped the coins into my sweater pocket, the pocket without the hole, thinking about how many sheets of new music 50 cents would buy. Mr. Hardley glared when the Wonder Bread door banged shut behind me. He squinted as I creaked across the wooden floor. Mr. Hardley was in the habit of charging too much for his stale food, and he made bad change when he thought he could get away with it. I squinted back at him as I gave him Ma's order. Mr. Hardley's been worse than normal. Since his attic filled with dust and collapsed under the weight, he hired folks for the repairs and argued over every nail and every little minute. The whole place took shoveling for days before he could open again, and some stock was so bad it had to be thrown away. The stove clanked in the corner as Mr. Hardley filled Ma's order. I could smell apples, ground coffee, and peppermint. I sorted through the patterns on the feed bags, sneezed dust, blew my nose. When Mr. Hardley finished sacking my things, I paid the bill, and tucking the list in my pocket along with the change, hurried home, so Ma could bake the cake before Daddy came in. But after Ma emptied the sack, setting each packet out on the oilcloth, she counted her change. And I remembered with a sinking feeling that I hadn't kept an eye on Mr. Hardley's money handling, and Mr. Hardley had cheated again. Only this time he cheated himself, giving us 4 cents extra. So while Ma mixed a cake, I walked back to Mr. Hardley's store, back through the dust, back through the Wonder Bread door, and thinking about the secondhand music in a moldy box at the shop in Joy City. Music I could have for 2 cents a sheet. I placed Mr. Hardley's overpayment on the counter and turned to head back home. Mr. Hardley cleared his throat, and I wondered for a moment if he'd call me back to offer a piece of peppermint or pick me out an apple from the crate. But he didn't, and that's okay. Ma would have thrown a fit if I'd taken a gift from him. 50 miles south of home. This one's super short. In Amarillo, wind blew plate glass windows in, tore electric signs down, ripped wheat straight out of the ground. Rules of dining. This one you really have to take a moment and picture them sitting down to eat in the middle of a very dusty home, okay? Ma has rules for setting the table. I place plates upside down, glasses bottom side up, napkins folded over forks, knives, and spoons. When dinner is ready, we sit down together and Ma says, now. We shake out our napkins, spread them on our laps, and flip over the glasses and plates, exposing neat circles, round comments on what life would be without dust. Daddy says the potatoes are peppered plenty tonight, Polly, and chocolate milk's for dinner. Chocolate milk for dinner? Aren't we in clover? When really all our pepper and chocolate is nothing but dust. I heard word from Livy Killian. The Killians can't find work, can't get food. Livy's brother Reuben, 15 last summer, took off, thinking to make it on his own. I hope he's okay. With the baby growing inside Ma, it scares me thinking, where would we be without somewhere to live, without some work to do, without something to eat? At least we've got milk, even if we have to chew it. Breaking drought. After 70 days of wind and sun, of wind and clouds, of wind and sand, after 70 days of wind and dust, a little rain came. This is the last one I'm going to read. It's called Dazzled. In the kitchen, she is my ma. In the barn and the fields, she is my daddy's wife. But in the parlor, ma is something different. She isn't much to look at, so long and skinny, her teeth poor, her dark hair always needing a washing. But from the time I was 4, I remember being dazzled by her whenever she played piano. Daddy bought it, an old Kramer, his wedding gift to her. She came to this house and found gaps in the walls, a rusty bed, no running water, and that piano gleaming in the corner. Daddy gets soft eyes standing behind her while she plays. I want someone to look that way at me. On my 5th birthday, Ma sat me down beside her and started me to reading music, started me to playing. I'm not half as good as Ma. She can pull Daddy into the parlor even after the last milking when he's so beat he barely knows his own name. And all he wants is a mattress under his bones. You've got to be something to get his notice that time of day, but Ma can. I'm not half so good with my crazy playing as she is with her fine tunes and her fancy fingerwork, but I'm good enough for Arlie, I guess. Okay, I'm going to stop there. The story does take a turn for a tragic event. And like I said, it gets a little hard to imagine Billie Jo's life and how tough it is, but it's definitely worth the read. There's a lot of hope built into this tragedy as well, and I hope that you'll take some time to check out this book at your local library. So I hope you enjoyed this week's First Chapter Friday. If you have any suggestions for me as to books that you would like to see featured on my YouTube channel, please just drop a comment below and I'll do my best to get to it. Until then, I'll see you next Friday, and happy reading.